Welcome, everyone. Today we are talking about N2W 4.6, our brand new release that is currently live on the AWS and Azure marketplaces. So Catalin and I are really glad you can join us today. We have really exciting enhancements both for AWS and Azure, and they hit on everything from advanced DR, streamlining multi-cloud, more storage savings, more efficiencies in order to be rapidly compliant. For the new customers out there, also, we have a great bonus get to know N2W feature. And let's just get straight to it. My name is Jessica Eisenberg. I'm on the product marketing team here at N2W.
My name is Catalin Voico. I'm one of the system engineers here at N2W.
And by the way, I want to add, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to drop any of them in the chat. We're here to answer anything. So this is cross-region and cross-account EKS backup and disaster recovery. EKS, which is AWS's managed Kubernetes service. It's one of AWS's fastest growing platforms. And there's good reason for that. EKS handles all of the complex orchestration of your Kubernetes control plane. However, what isn't handled is native backup and DR. And this is why we knew we had to create a solution, was because Kubernetes, it's not like a VM in the sense that it's a very dynamic system. It has constantly moving parts. It's always scaling up and down. So this was a major pain point, and our dev team was able to come up with a solution that not only solves these backup and DR complexities, it integrates completely seamlessly into your existing backup and DR operations. Not only can you back up EKS to your native backup account, with essentially no operational overhead, you can now perform true disaster recovery across regions and accounts. So that protects you from, for example, regional outages that we've certainly seen a lot of, and also ransomware attacks or other cyber threats that could potentially hijack your AWS account.
Yeah, I completely agree, Jessica. This is a great addition to the already great feature that we had, the EKS backup, which was launched in the previous version. Now we have added the DR capability to it, right? So you will now be able to back up from one account and restore in a different account, which gives it this extra power, which gives you the extra security and reliability that you want, right? And predictability, because you'll know that you can recover very easily from our UI. I will simply show it how it looks like. You'll have a new button on the left, which is called EKS DR configurations, and you will simply have to come in here and set up what you're expecting to do. You will need to set up buckets, right? So you will have to write the data into an S3 bucket. So you can choose it for the original region and the original account. And then you need to point also to a DR region and DR account. This is how it looks like. It's very simple to set up, and you'll need to set this up for as many different accounts that you want to set it up for. So you simply select which regions, which accounts. In my case, I selected different accounts, but the same region, North Virginia. And then when you go into the policies, you will be able to create a new policy or use the existing one. And when you go and select that you want to back up the EKS, you can see here the cluster or the namespaces. Then in the more options page, you'll have the EKS backup mode, which is also an addition to this version 4.6, where there are two modes, standard and Copia, portable, right? If you hover your mouse above it, you will see what both of them do. But in simple terms, when you don't do cross-region or cross-account backups, standard EBS snapshots will be fine. When you do DR backups cross-region or cross-account or both, you need to select Copia here. Otherwise, your backups will not work cross-region, cross-account. So Copia, what this actually does, it writes in those buckets that we have pre-configured here in the EKS DR configuration, and it writes the persistent data, but also the information about the cluster. And that's it. Then you save your policy. Of course, in the DR tab, you'll specify to what regions, what accounts the backups should go to. And then you simply run your policy. And on the recovery screen, you'll be able to select where you want to restore to. Because again, keep in mind, you have sent the backup to two places. In the original account, to that S3 bucket that you mentioned, original account, original region, and then you have it also in the other account, other region, or same region, but you'll be able to select where to recover to.
Okay, now we're getting into Azure. More cost optimization with automated cold blob tiering. So N2W, our customers, of course, know we've been very, very strong on cost optimization. This is one of these features that differentiates us and helps our customers save big on storage. Over the years, we've helped AWS customers tiering to S3 standard, Glacier instant retrieval, etc. For Azure, in the previous release, we added hot blob storage, and that was just the starting point. So the problem was that lots of Azure customers, especially those with compliance mandates, need to retain backups for long periods of time, most likely longer than 90 days. And keeping everything in Azure Backup Vault storage can get very expensive. And not to mention that you're paying every single month on licensing fees. That's essentially the privilege to back up your VMs. And that's not a flat fee. So if your workload is scaling, if your VMs are getting larger, that initial licensing monthly fee is also going to increase. So what the kids say, the math doesn't math, right? So in 4.6, we're really completing that picture with cool and cold blob tiers. So now you can set a policy that puts those dailies or those weeklies or monthlies or whatever you have into hot or cold, depending on what your retention requirements are and your compliance mandates.
So again, we're really happy that we are able to bring this into the version 4.6 because it kind of brings parity with what we had on AWS. As Jessica mentioned, in AWS, we support those different storage tiers, and now we do the same thing in Azure. I believe in this version, Jessica, we do not support archive yet, but again, something to look forward to because at some point we will have that as well. Now, how it looks like in the UI, you'll be able to go and create an Azure policy or use an existing one. And when you go to lifecycle management and you enable the use storage repository, you'll be able to say, okay, I want to store this in an Azure repository. And then you have the access tiers to select from here. Hot, cool, and cold. Again, we will have a calculator for these, so you'll be able to simulate cost savings and so on our website. But also there's information, of course, in our documentation about the pricings and links to the Azure website, because that's actually where the pricing is coming from. And you can see on the slides here, there are some recommendations that we have, right? If you want to keep data for a very long time, like 7 years or even longer, of course, go with the cheapest one. Why not? Because putting data in a backup storage for 7 years most likely also means that you're not really accessing that data as frequently. So why not make the best out of it and get the most cost savings from it?
Exactly. And as Katalin also mentioned, that we have currently an Azure TCO calculator on our site, but that will be expanded for these new tiers. We're also going to have another webinar delving into real life use cases where you're comparing those N2W costs to what an Azure customer would use with Azure Backup, and whether they're backing up with locally redundant storage or zone redundant storage, whatever it may be, you're going to see a huge savings no matter what. Next, still in Azure. So this is also a very exciting feature. I'm going to sort of start with a scenario that's more common than it should be. So let's say you're an Azure team, you need to recover your Azure environment after an incident. The Azure cloud went down in a certain region. We've certainly seen those before. And maybe your VMs came back fine. They were in another region already, which is a great start. But what happens is if you don't have access to your Azure console, you can't access your network configurations. So what happens? You have to rebuild them manually. And if at all, if you can rebuild them at all, if you have that information. So that means you're talking about all your subnets, all your routing files, all your security groups, and they're not available at whatever hour that the outage decides to happen. Usually for some reason it's at 4 a.m. So with this feature, of course, we've had our customers know we've had VPC capture and clone for AWS for quite a while. It's one of our most popular features. We built the equivalent for Azure VNets. Now you can capture your full network configuration. You can do it on a schedule. You can clone it across a region or across an account. So yeah, it's basically everything with your VMs in one full sweep. So Katalin, you want to talk about it more?
Oh, definitely. We're very excited to bring this again into version 4.6. We've been expecting this for a while now, and customers have been asking for it because, again, as Jessica mentioned, we had the equivalent VPC capture and clone for AWS for a while, and we built on top of that one as well. So that doesn't mean we're stopping here. In AWS, we can do VPCs, we can do load balancers, we can do transit gateways. Most likely in Azure, we're going to expand and support more and more things as well when it comes to the networking components. Now, this first step step is capturing the VNets. And the VNets, as Jessica mentioned as well, include your security groups, right? Your route tables, your all the settings, by the way, which we have a documentation for, so you'll see a full list in there. I'm going to just show you how it looks like from the user interface. Just to remind everyone, you go here to the top right to the settings, then you have the capture network environments, which is the capture part of the feature. There are two parts, capture and then clone. Capture, you will simply enable if you want to run this on a schedule, and you can say here what frequency you want to run it at. And what happens is our tool is going to look into your environments in both AWS and Azure, and it's going to write down all your settings in what we call some template files, JSON templates, right? Those are being stored in the database of the N2W solution, so that's fine. And then when you need them, you simply go into accounts here on the left, right? And you will see your Azure subscriptions and your AWS accounts as well. And after that, you select which Azure subscription you want, and you click Clone Network Entities. Then it's going to show you the clone source and the clone destination. Very simple. In the clone source, you see there's a drop-down menu, but you cannot click it right now because we only support VNets at this point in time. In future, there will most likely be additions to this, but then it shows you in which locations we found VNets and in which resource groups, and then what VNets. So I have VNet 1, VNet 2, and it shows me the capture point in time. So again, if I had this enabled to run on a schedule, I would see multiple entries here. I just ran mine manually. Then once I have selected the source, I go to select the destination. So I can recover it to the same account, or I can clone it to the same account. But if I had multiple Azure subscriptions, I could select from this list a different Azure subscription to clone it to. So you see, this becomes very useful in many scenarios. Jessica mentioned if you get hacked or compromised or there's an outage, this will be a lifesaver for you, right? And you hear all the time teams saying, yeah, but we have infrastructure as code. We have CloudFormation. We have Terraform. Okay. We accept that. That's no problem. We don't compete with you, right? We want to help you. So this is a safety net in case whatever you have right now does not work for some reason. Then you can rely on N2W because we did that for you as well. You click one button, you recover your networks. So you'll select what location you want to clone it to. You select a resource group from, of course, that other account, and then give it a name. Now, as you know, in Azure, everything is unique. So the names of your VMs, the names of your disks, the names of your VNets, also unique. So you just have to have a unique name, and then you click Clone VNet. Similar like the feature for AWS, you can also download in AWS, it's called the CloudFormation template. Here it's called an ARM template, and you can download this locally to your computer, edit anything you want to edit, and then you can run it in Azure through ARM.
All right, now we're getting more into how efficiencies are put into effect with multi-cloud. So this one is a bit more under the hood. If you're running both AWS and Azure policies with N2W. So AWS and Azure don't naturally think about accounts and subscriptions the same way. AWS accounts, Azure uses subscriptions. And until now, there was a bit of dissonance in how these were handled, and mainly due to how scopes such as authentication, how they were inherited with each one. Now everything is completely consistent. It makes multi-cloud really truly unified and a very, very easy to use experience. And yeah, I'll let Kathleen kind of get into the weeds with this one.
We have already customers that are using both clouds, right? And in AWS, it was always straightforward. You had one account per account number, right? In Azure, it's slightly different because in Azure, you can have one tenant and then multiple subscriptions under that tenant, right? So in the previous versions in our tool, it would show as one account in the account list. And I will show you what I mean by that. So in here under accounts, you would see just one Azure account. But here in this one Azure account, I could have had 20 subscriptions. But when you look down in the list here, it will show I have 14 accounts, and to us in our license server, it would show the actual number that you had. So there was this mismatch. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to bring everything to the same level. We wanted our customers, first of all, to be able to see how many subscriptions they have actually. And we did that with this new addition. So what's new? First of all, there's a new button above accounts here, which is called security principal. This is going to be very useful for us also moving forward. When we add additional clouds, it's going to use the same principle. So looking forward to Q3, Q4 this year, we will add another cloud provider and it's going to be using this. So that's great. Now, what is an Azure security principle? The Azure security principle will be using the information that you used in the previous version for adding your Azure account. So it's going to be needing the tenant, the client, and the secret. The same way you did it before, you can either do it through an app registration or managed identity. So after you do this, you will be going into accounts, and then you need to add your subscriptions, which to us, one subscription equals one account. So you can have one security principal and you can add 20 subscriptions if that security principal has access to those, right? So I go to Azure, it asks me to select my security principal, so I can add also multiple security principals in there. But the only thing we look at for now is the accounts. So each subscription is treated as one individual account. If I had here 5, I could create 5 different accounts, one for each subscription. This is logical because when you go into policies and you create the policy for Azure, right, it will ask you which account you want to do this for. And if I had, again, 5, I would see a drop down here. I would see all 5 of them. And I can say, okay, for this subscription, for that subscription, I'm creating this policy. And by selecting one account, you have access, of course, to go and browse the resources of that one subscription. So it makes everything easier. It makes everything like the customer has access to all the information we can see in the license server as well. So there's no mismatch of information. Also, what's interesting, what happens is if you had reports set up for your Azure account in the previous version, but then you had 5 subscriptions, what you will notice when you upgrade to the latest version is that we have created those reports for you automatically for each of your subscriptions. So you will see instead of 1 report, you will see 5. Again, very useful because you want to keep receiving those reports of what backups you're taking, what you're protecting, what you're not protecting, and so on.
This is the future, right? This is what companies are going to be doing, multi-cloud. And I think very, very, very few vendors are implementing these ways to streamline multi-cloud procedures. And this is just, one of the ways where not only do you get this very streamlined UI, you get these kind of under the hood tweaks that companies, they don't need a separate Azure expert team or a separate GCP team. They essentially can do everything here. So we can move on to, we call it the Global Protection Governance Dashboard. So here's I'm going to throw out a question to the listeners. Do you know which of your cloud resources are actually protected right now? Can you theoretically, if an auditor came, can you get a stat on that? And can you visualize that across all of the clouds that you're using? So until now, I'm assuming, you guys can feel free to comment, but this is very, very hard to do. So we have had reports in place for this purpose to see which of your resources were protected and unprotected, but we've expanded this into sort of a dashboard UI visualization. And so you now have a live view every single time you log in of all of the resources that may be at risk. And this is especially useful, as I said, if an auditor comes in and asks for that verification. And Kathleen will get into it, but there's a couple of enhancements in terms of, for example, immutability. You can see which policies have compliance lock enabled, so you can see those ransomware gaps quite quickly.
Yeah, for sure. So you will be finding this on the dashboard. As Jessica mentioned, it's a UI edition, so it's a widget right on the dashboard. And it looks like this, right? It says protection coverage. You can switch between viewing it by size or viewing it by resource count by just clicking on these 2 buttons here. And what's interesting, you can see here in my environment, for example, I'm backing up very little things, right? Very small things. And also in terms of numbers of resources. But it tells me, hey, I'm backing up 24 gigabytes of instances worth out of a total of 300. So 277 are not backed up. And now this raises the question, and this is especially very useful for end customers, but also for MSPs. Think about this. MSPs will be able to ask their customers, hey, we noticed that you're not backing up this and this and this. Is this what you really want? Or is this something that we missed? Do you want to back up more resources? So it will open the doors to communication, first of all, but secondly, to maybe increasing the workloads that are getting backed up. So it's a win-win for everybody because you get the reporting that you want, you get the compliance that you want. On top of the already existing reports, as Jessica mentioned, those still exist, right? Unprotected resources report, protected resources report. So you could always pull those and compare. But now we do that comparison for you in the UI, so you don't have to anymore. And if you always need, for example, here in the resource count, it tells me I'm protecting 5, I'm not protecting 82. Now, your next question will be, okay, what are those 82 that I'm not protecting? So in the UI, you will not see the individual instance IDs and so on because it would be filling the screen pretty quickly, especially for large environments. So that's why you go back on the reports. And in the report, when you pull them, it will tell you the instance ID, the volume ID, the resource ID of every single resource that is either protected or unprotected. And as Jessica also mentioned on that slide, we can now show you in the policy report, when you pull this one, you will see there are 3 columns added at the back where it shows if the policy is using the snapshot lock for the original region, or if it's using the snapshot lock for the DR region, or last but not least, if it's using the immutability at the S3 level. So if you have legal hold or compliance on your S3 storage repository.
And that's a really great point, what Kathleen said about MSPs, because I think this allows MSPs to really be a step up. They're not just a backup partner, they're really a compliance partner at this point. And this is what your clients are really, really going to appreciate, and how you can also, expand your clientele.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And think about this. Resources are getting created and deleted, right? And especially for large organizations, that happens at scale. So you want to make sure that you get a report based on, okay, these are the things you're protecting. These are the things that you're not protecting. And our tool comes again and helps you with automation like tag-based backups, which we have discussed in many of our previous webinars as well. But tag-based backup simply allows you, at creation of a resource, you put a specific tag, and based on that tag, our tool knows what to do, knows to add it into that policy, so the resource gets automatically backed up. But if you're not using tag-based backup, then this new feature will save your life.
Okay, so let's talk about ZeroEBS and Zero Managed Disk. So these are sort of going back to those repositories, that cold storage, depending on what cloud you're on, just to back up in case you may not be aware of this feature. Once your backup is safely copied to one of our storage repositories, whether that be S3, Glacier, Blob, and by the way, Wasabi as well, why keep paying for that original snapshot, right? You don't have to. You can delete it. You can save a lot of money. So this version, again, it's the same process. We have a confirmation on that existing workflow. So Kathleen, we could briefly talk about that.
Yeah, of course. So as you can see here, there are some steps, right? The flow is the same. It doesn't really change anything for you, but we have added this third step as a verification of the successful backup into the storage repository. So in the UI, it will look something like this. You would go into your policy, be it an existing one, be it a new one, doesn't matter. Go into the lifecycle management tab, and here are your existing settings. So my settings says, could you want backup time, and keep it in S3 for 1 month, and then expire it after 1 month and keep it in Glacier for 3 months, right? So that's fine. But we have added this here, right? We had this checkbox before, but now we have enhanced it to say, hey, only delete my original snapshot on successful backups into storage repository. What would happen if you say always delete it, right? If the backup was for some reason unsuccessful into S3, it would still delete your snapshot. So you really don't want to do that, because you will not have a backup for that particular backup time. That's why for new policies, especially, this will by default be only on success. For your existing policies, you can always go and change that as well.
So now, final bonus feature. If you're a completely new customer, this is great. It's also wonderful if maybe you're an existing customer and you're onboarding a new team member. So we built a loaded quick start experience, and this is right inside the console, and it walks you through various things: connecting an account, setting up a policy, configuring DR, everything, confirming, that coverage in the government's dashboard that we talked about. This is all step-by-step, plain English. You don't have to hunt for documents. So we're really excited about this. We think it will really enhance that first user onboarding experience. So Kathleen, you want to show this one?
Oh yeah, for sure. So very excited about this one as well, especially because we get trial launches like all the time from the marketplace, right? People who are aware and look for backup, they will find our solution high there in the list, and they will deploy a free trial. Now, of course, we can't be there with everybody when they launch it. So we really thought about a way of how can we be there while not being there. So we added this guy. Now, when you launch the solution for the first time, you will see what I'm showing you here when I click Resume Guide. So in the question mark, if you're an existing customer, you can still benefit from this, but you can click Resume Guide. And it will tell you, for AWS, I did all the steps, right? So I cannot undo them. So that means I've created an account, I've created a policy, a schedule, and so on. It would simply walk you through the step. But now I can say, and by the way, I'm showing what we're going to add as a third cloud on screen as well here, but also for Azure. If I select Azure, it will take me to step 12, because again, I have configured a lot of my solution already, but it tells me something that I haven't configured, right? And it tells me, hey, there's a new feature which you can use, which was added in the previous version, to shut down resources on Azure like you did on AWS. In AWS, you can shut down and start again resources like EC2 instances and RDS. In Azure, you can do that with VMs for now. So when you click next, it takes you to that feature, and it tells you, hey, to create this, click here. Then select Azure. Then on the next screen, it will tell you, fill in the information that you want. Select the operation targets, put in a schedule, and then save this. And once you did that, it will tell you that also your Azure part is complete. Now, this being a new feature, right, a bonus feature and a new feature, we will build on top of that based on the feedback that we received from new customers, but also from existing customers. If you find this great and you want to see it enhanced, we can definitely do that. From time to time, a reminder being sent, for example, to you that, hey, you're not using DR for some policies, and you would see that notification. You can click it like here, dismiss, right? Or you can actually go in there and see, oh, I don't have DR. Let me see what's that about. And you get a short explanation right on screen. It's a great feature. I love it.
Drilling in on that, if you have any requests, any feature requests, any enhancements that you want to see, that you wish you had, talk to your CSM, email us, info@n2ws.com. We're happy to, kind of pass it on to the dev team and have discussions about it for sure. Okay, and that's it. That's 4.6. Basically, tons of stuff to make your cloud backup life much easier. Of course, if you're a customer, you're going to want to see the release notes and the upgrade patch. So all that is in the blog. You can see the link below. You'll also be getting an email with all the information on it. And of course, if you have any questions about your upgrade, reach out to your customer success manager. They will happily assist. And if you're not a customer, sign up for a demo, see everything, plus, tons more in action. Get a feel for the tool and let us help you. Again, I think I speak for both of us. We're really, really happy you can join us today, and we're really looking forward to a lot of big releases this year. So please, stay tuned for that.
Thank you for joining, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye.